Part 4 in solving a cube blindfolded with M2 and old Pochmann. In this video I'm going to teach you how to solve the edges blindfolded, or how to memorize the edges, and you should be good. Now, I tried to film edge memorization and corner memorization in the same video, but I ran out of time. So in this video I'm just going to teach you how to memorize the 12 edges on the cube so you can solve them without looking. So let's begin. Now I'm going to teach you the method that I use to memorize the edges, which was originally taught to me half a year ago or so by Emil, my good friend. Ilium's Cube on YouTube. You can search him up and subscribe. And what you do is you assign every edge, every side of every edge on the cube, a letter in the alphabet. So we're going to start back here with the letter A. And you go around the top layer clockwise on every side through the alphabet. So you start here with A, and then it goes to B here, then C, D, E, F, G, H. So that covers the first layer. Then you continue from H to I here, so it goes H, I, and then you go through the middle layer clockwise as well. So H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Then P continues to Q back here, so it goes O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X. And I'm not going to waste time going over that again, so keep replaying that part of the video so you can understand where every single letter for the edges are. So if I were to ask you, like, point to this sticker, you could tell me really quickly that that's the letter L, because I goes here, I, J, K, L. Practice that and get that down so you understand where every edge sticker is. And now I'm going to teach you how to use that to memorize the edges. Alright, I set up a little case here with 4 unsolved edges that you can try and memorize and solve without looking. So in order to start edge memorization, you're going to look down here in the buffer position and see where that has to go like you normally would. So this is the white of white blue, which belongs up here. But now that we know our edge letters, we have a letter for this position. So this white of white blue belongs here, and this is the letter C, because it goes A, B, C. So our first letter in the memorization is C. And in order to continue the memorization, what you have to do is you have to look at the last edge you just memorized. So since we've only memorized one so far, we now look at that one and see where that has to go. So this is the C position, has the white of white orange, and this belongs here, which is A, because the white orange belongs back here. So our memorization so far would be this, we start here, this goes to here, which is C, so we have C, and then this one goes to here, which is A. And then I'm going to continue by looking at this one, the A position. This is orange-blue, so this sticker belongs back here, which would be K, and then this of the white of white-red belongs here, which is E. So if you haven't noticed already, the memorization is C, this goes to here A, this to here K, this to here E, cake. Now I set that up on purpose, obviously, just to make it easier, but you're not always going to have things that easy to memorize. But I'll get onto that later on how to memorize harder things and make it really easy. So that's just an example for memorizing 4 edges. Of course, on a scrambled cube, you're going to have about 10, 11, or 12 letters you're going to have to memorize. We only had 4, cake, right? So one more time, in order to memorize, you start by looking down here and see where this has to go and come up with the letter for it. This is the white of white blue, which is here. The letter for that is C. Then you look where that has to go to, which is here, A. That has to go to here, that has to go to here. And you use that to come up with a series of letters you memorize. Now, some little important rules for that. Wait, before I tell you these little rules, you might be confused and you might think, okay, I memorized cake, but what does that tell me? Because when you're not looking at the cube, you're going to have the word cake stuck in your head, and that doesn't really help you when you're trying to solve a cube. Now, when you're blindfolded, you're going to have to think of your memorization again and start right at the beginning with the letter C. So what that tells you by memorizing C is that this edge has to go to the C position. So we're going to solve that pretending like we weren't looking. We know this goes to here, so we have to solve this like we normally would. Set it up with R prime U, R U prime, which brings it to the buffer. M2, undo that. So C is solved. And you're going to do that with all the edges. The next one was A, which belongs here. So we know that our buffer has to go to A. And you can see those two are solved. I'm not going to continue because I'm wasting time, but That's what you're going to do. You think back and you go through your whole memorization one letter at a time, and that's whatever letter you're at, that's what edge is here. So you have to set up that letter to the buffer. So now for those little special rules. Okay, if you remember, I told you a little rule when solving the edges that if the centers are flipped and the edge down here belongs in the middle layer, you have to do the opposite algorithm. Because right now the white red is here, which normally belongs at the top, but since the centers are flipped, you can see the white red centers are back here. Now you're going to need to know if the centers are going to be flipped with your eyes closed, and you might be wondering how you're going to do that. Well, it's easy. In order to keep track of if the centers are flipped or not, you're going to memorize your edges in groups of 2 or 4. And for every second or fourth edge, the centers will be flipped. For example, in this case, we have the first one going to here, which is K, and then this one to E. This was the end of our previous one. So KE. Now, the K is the first edge, so it doesn't matter if it's in the middle layer or not. The second one is E, and we know the E letter is right here, which is in the middle layer, and since it's the second of the 2 edges we're doing, we know the centers are going to be flipped. And by memorizing in groups of 2, you know it's a lot easier to keep track if the middle layer will be flipped or not. So I'll just show you. The first one goes to K, and then on the second one, since it's K-E, E is the second letter, it belongs up here in the middle. We have to do the opposite algorithm. This goes to here with M prime U2, M prime U2. It's a little hard to explain, but that's why you memorize. When you're memorizing with M2, you always have to memorize your letters in groups of 2 or 4. So then every second or fourth letter, if you notice it belongs in the middle layer here, you have to do the opposite algorithm. So that's the best I can do to explain that. Another little thing, I told you that there can be edges like this that are solved but flipped, and you might be wondering how you're going to memorize that to solve it, because you won't be able to look at the cube with your eyes closed. So in order to keep track of how to solve edges like this, you're not going to have, well, this is what I do. You do not put anything in your memorization to remind you of this. You're going to leave these to the end, so you're going to memorize all your edges like you normally would, and then right at the end, once you're confident with your memorization for the rest of the edges, and you notice one like this, you're just going to visually remember, okay, there is a flipped edge right here. So you don't memorize any letters or anything, you just remember once you're done the edges, you have to deal with this edge, or if it were like down here, you go, okay, the edge is going to be here and it's going to be flipped. So you have to unflip that. So you're not really memorizing anything, you're just remembering that there is one that's flipped and you're remembering where on the cube it is. So yeah. Now the final little case is how to memorize or how to continue memorizing when your buffer gets solved. So to start the memorization for this case, we look down here, this is the red of red blue, which belongs here, and this is the letter N. So our first letter in the memorization would be N. Now to continue, you would look at this sticker, which is N, and see where that has to go, which is down here. Now you might think that's V, it is V, except the rule is you're never actually going to memorize the buffer edge. So if you ever are trying to continue your memo and you get the orange, red, yellow edge, you just skip that and go on to the next one. So what I mean by this is, this goes to here, which is N, and instead of having V after, we're going to choose one of the other unsolved edges like we normally would when the buffer gets solved. So this goes to N, and then we can choose either this, O, P, or C, D to switch it with. So I would probably go N, and then directly to O, so our memorization would be no. And then we continue. This is the white of white blue, which goes to here, C, and then this is red of red green, which goes to back here, O. Since we did O twice, we know that our edges are going to be done. So I'll give you an example of that. This goes to here, which would be N. So with our eyes closed, we solve N, this to here. And then you can see this is already down there, so we don't have to memorize V. We just continue, we pick one of the other ones immediately. I chose O, which is here, so we're going to switch it with O. And then this goes up here, which is the letter C. And then this goes back to O. So whenever the buffer is in your edge memorization, you do not include the letters U or V, because the buffer covers U and V. You don't never have U or V in your memorization. You just go straight on to the next one. Now, in general, to make edge memorization easier so it sticks in your head, what I do, a little trick, is you're going to turn the letters in your memorization into words. And the first letter of the word will tell you what letter you actually memorized. So what I mean is, here the memo for this would be this goes to here, which is L. This orange-green goes back here, which is J. This goes to here, which is Q. And this one goes to here, which is N. So it's LJQN. That's a little hard to memorize already, and you have to memorize 10 or 12 of that. So it does get confusing. So what I would actually memorize here would be L, so I'd probably turn that into little. Then J would become John, Q would become quits, and then the N would become now or something. So instead of memorizing LJQN, which could get confusing the more you do, you just memorize little John quits now, and you continue like that. So I'm running out of time at like 5 seconds, so good luck. If you're confused, send me a message or watch a different video. Good luck, bye.